Ms. Rachel, who is a kind of like Mr. Rogers type figure. She has a YouTube show that uses singing to educate children. She posted on her Instagram, 3 babies died of hypothermia in Gaza the past few days. Over 14,500 have been killed total. Children have the right to live. And in response to that, Stop Antisemitism tweeted, Ms. Rachel continues to spew her propaganda about Gaza numbers, never once mentioning the babies kidnapped or murdered by Hamas. Also, it's in the 50s, 60s in Gaza, not exactly freezing weather. Can you address this claim that given that because it's in the 50s and 60s, there isn't hypothermia?
Yeah, sure. I mean, before I do that, that numbers that we know of is that 7 infants who died of hypothermia, and 8 people in total have died of hypothermia so far in the last week. It is cold. I'm in Jordan, about 200 kilometers away from Gaza right now, and it is cold. It is very cold. You can't see it, but I'm wearing a Heat Tech Uniqlo top underneath my blouse, and I have an electric heater turned on right next to me in addition to the household heating. And I just moved here from Canada, so this isn't me being a wuss. It is actually cold. It has also been raining continuously for about a week. A family member of mine gave birth on Christmas Eve, and they've been too worried to take the baby out, even bundled. So it is very wet. I took the dog out a couple days ago in the rain because she needed to be walked, and she got soaked. We both got soaked, and I was shivering by the time I got to the house. I am a grown-ass adult with subcutaneous fat and glycogen stores. A baby is not. A baby does not have sufficient subcutaneous fat. A baby does not have sufficient stores of glycogen, so the storage form of sugar or glucose. And so when a baby gets cold, a baby stays cold and just gets colder and cannot produce glucose needed to make energy. Then they become hypoglycemic as well, and eventually they die. And so babies are very predisposed to hypothermia or to this dangerous level of being cold for people who don't know what hypothermia is. And the smaller you are in size, so as children get younger, and particularly true for babies, the higher your surface area to volume ratio, which makes it more likely that you also lose heat and become very cold. So you're more likely to lose heat and become cold, and you don't have ways of generating energy when you need to, when you're cold. And they're wet and they can't get dry because they're intense. And Israel is obstructing all the aid, according to the WHO and the UN, all the aid that would be needed to reinforce these tents. So tents and blankets and clothes for warmth are obstructing it from entering, that it's there sitting at the border ready to come in, and they're obstructing it from entering. So people are getting very, very cold. And when you get that cold and you're wet and you're young and you're malnourished, because malnutrition is also a risk factor for hypothermia, and you're much more likely to become hypothermic if you're malnourished. And so, I mean, whoever said that, it's just frankly just false. And anytime I hear people say, "Oh, but you don't mention these things," or "You're lying about the numbers," or it just immediately tells me that this is someone who does not humanize Palestinians. That's all you need to know. It's irrelevant whether it's 40,000 or 5,000 or 50,000 or 200,000. Obviously, higher numbers is worse, but it's just to say that it's irrelevant. These are human lives. And when we sit there and debate the numbers, you lose the bigger picture. And on the topic of numbers, I'm not here to debate, but the reality is the estimated numbers that are coming out from the UN are grossly underestimated. We know that. We know that from the past. Palestinian authorities have in the past, if anything, underestimated casualties. This is, on previous assaults on Gaza. Sorry, when I say Palestinian authorities, I mean not the political group, but Palestinians who are in positions that share these sorts of statistics. And we know from the past that they vastly underestimate these figures. And in this particular case, we know that tens of thousands of people are missing. Months ago, we knew that Save the Children was saying over 20,000 children are missing. over 20,000 children that are unaccounted for in these statistics that are provided because they're maybe buried in mass graves, maybe detained, because we know that children are also being detained, separated from their families, maimed beyond recognition so that you cannot identify their body as deceased. The numbers that are being listed are people whose bodies have been retrieved and who are identifiable, and who the broken healthcare system and system of census taking was able to capture. So you know it's vastly underestimated. And these are these traumatic deaths. What about all the other deaths? You know, the people that are dying because they don't have access to their diabetes medication, or they're dying because they're immunocompromised. And so when they get things that you and I would likely recover from, like a GI bug, you know, a gastrointestinal disease or pneumonia, they die because they're so immunocompromised, because they can't access medical care, because they can't access the medications that they need to treat these self-limiting diseases. These are all direct consequences of the way that Israel has architectured its aggression on the civilian population of Gaza, and they're not going to be counted in these statistics. So while I'm telling you numbers shouldn't matter when you're talking about human lives, numbers are also vastly underestimated. But yeah, that comment about hypothermia is just medically incorrect.
Yeah. And it has to do also with rain, not just temperatures. And of course, the temperatures get lower at night. I mean, I was conflicted about even bringing it up, but I just felt like it was such a disgusting piece and desperate piece of propaganda. And to go after this woman who really is like today's Mr. Rogers just shows you how much like the claims of anti-Semitism are weaponized in order to whitewash Israel's crimes.
Katie, it is very cold. And I'm telling you this. I mean, every day when I go outside, I shudder to think what families in Gaza are experiencing. And I was telling my family the other day, because they were complaining about olive season and how, you know, it's been a really dry winter relative to what the water needs are in this region. This was about 2 weeks ago, before this flood of rains in the last 2 weeks. And I remember saying, you know, there's part of me that wants rain because I know the earth needs it. And there's part of me that really prays to God that this is an incredibly dry winter, because I don't know how people 200 kilometers away are going to survive a wet winter.
So much has happened in the world, you know, the whole crisis in Syria that really exploded recently. So people's attention has been diverted away from Gaza, but we just cannot forget this genocide is happening every day. As we talked about, people are literally freezing to death, including babies. And we cannot let this genocide be normalized. That's what is happening, but those of us of conscience can't let that happen. And so someone like Tanya is at the forefront of preventing us from accepting what is being done to the Palestinian people.